I always thought that if my world were to fall apart, it would be because of something monumental, something I could see coming from a mile away. But as it turned out, destruction crept in quietly, masked as ordinary moments. It started with a funeral. Not just any funeral, but that of my best friends, Mike and Eric. We had been through everything together: academy training, late-night stakeouts, even a few near-death experiences on the job. But none of that had prepared me for this. Murdered. By one of our own. Judas, that's what I call him now, was someone we trusted, someone we thought had our backs. Instead, he had orchestrated their deaths, and while I was standing over their graves, staring at the cold, hard reality of betrayal, I had no idea that my own personal betrayal was waiting for me back home. The day before I left for the funeral, my wife, Lisa, asked me to fix the wiring in our house. "It keeps flickering," she said, standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, tapping her fingers against the counter. "I don't want the kids playing in the living room if there's a risk of a fire." I told her I'd take care of it, but the truth was, I had no idea what I was doing when it came to electrical work. So, I called an electrician, a simple enough decision. A decision that cost me everything. When I arrived back home late that night, exhausted from burying my best friends, the house was dark. Too dark. The kind of dark that tells you something isn't right. At first, I thought we had been robbed. The front door was slightly ajar. The living room was a mess, drawers open, cushions tossed to the floor. My stomach twisted as I rushed upstairs, calling Lisa's name. No answer. The bedroom was even worse. The closet doors were wide open, and most of her clothes were gone. The safe, where we kept our savings, had been emptied. I stood there, my breath coming in slow, ragged gulps as I tried to process what I was seeing. Then it hit me. This wasn't a robbery. This was abandonment. Lisa was gone. And so was every last dollar we had. I had spent the entire day mourning the deaths of my closest friends, and all the while, my wife, the woman I had trusted with my life, was packing her bags and running off with another man. I sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the hollow space where her jewelry box had been. My hands clenched into fists. My chest burned with something dark, something unforgiving. It wasn't just betrayal. It was war. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wreckage of what used to be my life. The silence in the house was deafening. No Lisa. No kids. Just me and the echoes of a love that, I now realized, had been dying right under my nose. I forced myself to move, to search for some kind of explanation. Maybe, just maybe, there was another reason for this. Maybe Lisa had taken the kids somewhere safe. Maybe someone had forced her to leave. But then I saw it. A receipt. It was half crumpled and lying under the dresser, like she had dropped it in her rush to leave. I picked it up, smoothing it out, my heart hammering as I read the details. Paid in full, cash. One-way ticket. Destination, Florida. My hands tightened around the paper. Florida. We had no family there. No friends. But I knew who did. The electrician. His name was Ricky Morales. I had barely spoken to the guy, I was too busy with the funeral, but I remembered his voice over the phone, the way Lisa had casually mentioned him when I told her I'd called someone to fix the wiring. "He's good," she had said. "Came highly recommended." Yeah. I bet he did. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the security app. We had cameras around the house, mostly for safety reasons, but also because I was a cop. You learn to take precautions when you've spent years chasing down criminals. I clicked on the most recent footage and fast-forwarded. The pit in my stomach grew with every second that passed. Then, at 2:37 p.m., hours before I arrived home, I saw it. Lisa. Walking out the front door with a suitcase. And behind her. Ricky. They kissed before getting into his truck. My hands shook. The screen blurred for a moment, and I realized it was because I was gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles had gone white. This wasn't just some impulsive affair. This was planned. She had waited for me to leave, knowing I'd be too distracted by my grief to see what was happening. And then she took everything. The money. The house. My dignity. My vision darkened at the edges. I had spent my entire career chasing criminals, bringing justice to those who had been wronged. But I had never been this angry before. Lisa didn't just cheat on me. She robbed me. And I was going to get everything back. Even if it meant hunting them both down myself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house I used to call home. My brain was a storm of betrayal, rage, and calculation. I was a cop, a damn good one, but this wasn't just another case. This was personal. Lisa had always been careful with money, always planning for the future. If she took everything and ran, it meant one thing: she wasn't coming back. That meant I had two choices. I could file a report, let the department handle it, pretend I was just another victim of a cheating spouse. Or I could do what I was trained to do. Track. Hunt. And make them pay. I chose the second option. First, I needed to know where they went after leaving my house. The footage showed Ricky's truck pulling out of the driveway, but it didn't tell me where they headed. Luckily, I had another advantage. Lisa was sloppy. She may have emptied the safe, but she forgot about my other stash, cash I kept hidden in the garage. Enough for emergencies, or in this case, a manhunt. I grabbed my laptop and ran a search through the department system. Ricky Morales. Licensed electrician, no criminal record, at least nothing official. But his name popped up in some old reports. A DUI 5 years ago. A bar fight last year that never made it to court. And one other thing. A connection to Florida. His uncle owned a property there, a rundown motel near the coast. Not exactly the kind of place Lisa would choose for a fresh start, but if they were hiding out, it made sense. I leaned back in my chair, my jaw tightening. So that's where you're going. I closed my laptop, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. I wasn't filing a report. I wasn't letting anyone else handle this. Lisa stole my life. And I was going to steal it back. I hit the road before dawn, heading south, my mind locked onto one thing: revenge. Lisa and Ricky thought they were smart. Thought they could run, disappear, and start a new life on my dime. But I had spent years tracking criminals who were smarter, faster, and far more dangerous than them. They weren't ghosts. They were amateurs. The drive was long, but my rage kept me alert. I ran through every detail in my head, every lie Lisa must have told, every moment I had been too blind to see what was happening right in front of me. I had trusted her. And she had walked away like I meant nothing. By the time I crossed into Florida, I had a plan. Ricky's uncle's motel was in a quiet, rundown part of town, one of those places where people stayed when they didn't want to be found. The perfect hideout for a cheating wife and the lowlife she ran off with. I parked a few blocks away, pulled on a baseball cap, and walked the rest of the way. No need to rush in like a lunatic. Not yet. I spotted Ricky's truck first. Parked near the far end of the lot, right outside one of the motel rooms. That was all the confirmation I needed. I clenched my fists. They were here. I wanted to kick the door down, drag him out, make him pay for what he did. But I had patience. I had restraint. I had a badge, one I was willing to ignore if it meant justice. For now, I needed intel. I walked into the motel's front office, where an old man sat behind the desk, half watching a fuzzy TV. His eyes flicked to me as I leaned against the counter. Looking for a friend, I said casually. Couple checked in yesterday, guy drives a red F-150. You seen him? The old man scratched his jaw. You a cop? I smirked. Do I look like a cop? He snorted. Nah. You look like someone who's about to do something real stupid. Smart guy. Room 14, he said. They haven't come out much. I nodded, slid a 50 across the counter, and walked out. Room 14. I stood outside their door, listening. A TV was on inside, muffled voices drifting through the thin walls. Lisa's laugh. Ricky saying something in that smug voice. I inhaled slowly, my fingers twitching. I could break the door down. Drag them both out. End it right now. But no. I wanted her to see me first. I wanted her to know she had nowhere left to run. I knocked on the door. Silence. Then. Footsteps. The door creaked open just an inch. A single green eye peered through the crack. Lisa. Her breath hitched. J. John. I smiled. Hey, sweetheart. Miss me? Her face went pale. She tried to slam the door shut, but I was faster. My hand shot out, shoving it open as I stepped inside. Ricky was on the bed, shirtless, holding a beer. His eyes went wide as I entered. Who the? I punched him before he could finish. He hit the floor with a thud. Lisa screamed. I grabbed her wrist before she could run, forcing her to look at me. Really look at me. You thought I wouldn't find you? I hissed. Tears welled in her eyes. John, please. I tightened my grip. Shut up. Ricky groaned, trying to get up. I kicked him in the ribs. He collapsed again, wheezing. Lisa sobbed. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught, I growled. But you did. She trembled. What are you going to do? I stared at her for a long moment, my heart pounding. Then I leaned in, my voice cold and steady. You'll see soon enough. Lisa's breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. I could see the terror in her eyes, the moment she realized this wasn't just a bad dream. It was real. She was trapped. She pulled away, but I tightened my grip on her wrist, forcing her to stay still. Ricky groaned from the floor, curling onto his side, clutching his ribs. Why, Lisa? My voice was low, but the rage underneath it was unmistakable. Why did you do this? Tears streaked down her face. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, John. I laughed bitterly. Oh yeah? How was it supposed to happen? You take my money, run off with this piece of trash, and live happily ever after. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Ricky coughed, struggling to sit up. Look, man. I slammed my boot onto his chest, pinning him to the floor. Don't speak. My voice was ice. You don't get to talk. His eyes darted to Lisa, panic setting in. Lisa trembled. I wanted to tell you, but I knew you'd never let me go. I felt my grip on reality slip. Let you go? I echoed. You were my wife. You didn't ask for a divorce, Lisa. You didn't talk to me. You waited until I was at a funeral, burying my best friends, so you could rob me blind and run. She shook her head rapidly. It wasn't like that. Ricky, he helped me see things clearly. I turned my gaze to Ricky. The scumbag smirked. Smirked. Like this was a joke. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed him by the collar and yanked him up, slamming him against the cheap motel dresser. The mirror above it shattered from the impact. Ricky cried out, blood running down his forehead. Lisa screamed. John, please. Stop. I turned back to her, my chest rising and falling with controlled fury. "You don't get to beg," I hissed. "Not after what you did." Tears kept falling down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I let out a humorless chuckle. "That's the thing, Lisa. You didn't just hurt me." I grabbed Ricky's wallet off the nightstand and pulled out his ID. I held it up between two fingers. "You hurt yourself." Ricky blinked, still dazed from the impact. What? I flipped open my phone and made a single call. "Hey, Pete. Got a fugitive for you. Ricky Morales. Check his name against Florida warrants." Ricky's face drained of color. Lisa looked between us, confused. What are you talking about?" I smirked. "You ran off with a criminal, sweetheart." Ricky tried to bolt for the door. I caught him in an instant, slamming him against the wall. "You're under arrest, Ricky," I muttered. "Bet Lisa didn't know you had 2 felony warrants, huh?" Lisa gasped. "No, that's not true." Ricky thrashed, but I twisted his arm behind his back. "I'd shut up if I were you." Minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled into the motel parking lot, lights flashing. Ricky panicked. "John, man, come on, we can work something out." I shoved him forward. "Tell it to the judge." Lisa stared at me, her lip trembling. "John, what about me?" I met her gaze, long and hard. Then I walked past her. "Lisa," I said without looking back, "you're already dead to me." I stepped outside, letting the cops handle the rest. And I never looked back. I walked away from that motel with my head high, but the storm inside me was far from over. Ricky was in cuffs. Lisa was broken, left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. But me? I was empty. The drive back home was long. Too long. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, my thoughts replaying everything like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. The laughter on that security footage. The bags packed neatly, like this had been planned for weeks. The way Lisa had looked at him. Like I never existed. By the time I pulled into my driveway, exhaustion hit me like a freight train. The house was exactly as I had left it, silent, empty, cold. I stood in the doorway for a long time before finally stepping inside. Nothing felt the same. The air was still thick with her perfume. Our wedding photo still hung on the wall, mocking me. 11 years of marriage. Gone in a blink. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and stared at the counter. That's when I saw it. A note. Crumpled, half hidden under a stack of mail. I grabbed it, my heart pounding. Lisa's handwriting stared back at me. "John. If you find this, it means I didn't get to explain. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted more. More than this house, more than the same routine every day. I wanted to feel alive again. I didn't mean for it to end this way. I hope one day, you can forgive me." I crushed the paper in my fist. More. She wanted more. More than me. I let out a bitter laugh and downed my drink in one go. Forgiveness? That wasn't coming. Not now. Not ever. Forgive her. Lisa must have lost her damn mind. I read the note again, just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. She wanted more. More than me. More than our home. More than the life we built together. And she thought I'd forgive her. I crumpled the note and threw it across the kitchen. It hit the fridge and fell to the floor, joining the wreckage of my life. I should have felt relief. I had found them. Ricky was in cuffs. Lisa was left alone, with nothing but her regret. But relief never came. The anger was still there, burning in my chest, refusing to fade. I needed to do something, anything, before it consumed me. So I went back to what I knew best. Work. I showed up at the station before sunrise, before anyone else, before the world had a chance to remind me that my life was now a disaster. "Major Carter," a voice called from behind me. I turned to see Pete, my partner, my closest friend since academy days, leaning against the doorway to my office. He had that look on his face. The one that said he knew exactly what was going on, even if I hadn't told him. "Heard about Morales," he said. "Nice catch." I shrugged. "Got lucky." Pete stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. "Lucky, huh? So it's just a coincidence that the guy you found happened to run off with your wife?" I met his eyes, my jaw tightening. "You got something to say, Pete?" He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Just that I've known you a long time, and I know when you're about to do something stupid." I let out a sharp breath. "It's done. Ricky's locked up, Lisa's out of my life. End of story." Pete studied me, like he was waiting for me to slip, to admit that it wasn't over, not in my head, not in my heart. But I wasn't giving him that. He finally nodded. "All right. But just so you know, revenge doesn't fix anything. It just makes the hole deeper." I scoffed. "Yeah. What would you have done if it was your wife?" Pete didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was quiet. "She left me too, John. Years ago. And I thought about going down the same road you just did." He shook his head. "Didn't change a damn thing." I stared at him. Pete had been divorced for years, but he never talked about it. Never let anyone see the cracks beneath that tough exterior. Now, for the first time, I understood why. The betrayal doesn't fade. The rage doesn't go away. It just sits there, waiting. And if you let it, it eats you alive. Pete left me with those words, but they stayed long after he was gone. I sat in my office, staring at the paperwork in front of me. Warrants, case files, reports, just the usual mess of law enforcement. But my brain wasn't processing any of it. All I could see was her. Lisa. Her face when she opened that motel door. The panic in her eyes when she realized she had nowhere left to run. And yet, even now, I wondered. Was she sorry? Did she regret it? Or was she just sorry she got caught? I clenched my jaw and shoved the papers aside. I needed air. I needed something to get my head straight. So I left. I drove through town, past the familiar streets, past the places Lisa and I used to go. The diner where we had our first date. The park where we walked every Sunday. The house where we spent our last Christmas together, where I had no clue she was already planning her escape. Every street was a graveyard of memories. I ended up at a bar. It wasn't the kind of place I usually went, a little too dark, a little too quiet, the kind of place where men sat alone, drowning in their own regrets. Fitting. I ordered whiskey. Straight. No ice. The first sip burned. The second went down easier. By the third, I wasn't thinking about Lisa anymore. That was the dangerous part. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't thinking at all. Rough night? The voice was soft, female. I looked up to see a woman sliding onto the bar stool next to me. She was pretty. Not in a flashy way, but in the kind of way that made you take a second look. Dark hair, dark eyes, a hint of something reckless in her smile. Rough week, I muttered. She smirked. Yeah. Join the club. I glanced at her hand. No ring. No tan line. Not that it mattered. I wasn't looking for a conversation. I wasn't looking for anything. But maybe that's exactly why I didn't walk away. Maybe, for the first time in a long time. I just wanted to forget. She told me her name was Natalie. I didn't ask if it was real. Didn't care. We drank in silence for a while. No small talk, no pointless pleasantries. Just two strangers sitting in the dark, letting the liquor do the talking. At some point, she leaned in. "Close. You look like a man trying to outrun something." I let out a dry chuckle. "Yeah. And what are you running from?" She smirked, swirling the last of her drink. "The same thing as you." I didn't ask what she meant. Didn't need to. Some wounds don't need words. Her fingers brushed my arm, lingering. It was subtle, but deliberate. A choice. I had a choice too. I could walk away. Go home. Sleep in the cold, empty bed Lisa left behind. Or I could let the night take me wherever it wanted. I reached for my wallet, tossed some cash on the bar. Natalie arched a brow. "That a signal?" I met her gaze, my voice steady. "Yeah." She smiled. "Then let's go." We barely made it through the hotel door before her lips crashed against mine. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts. This wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. It was rage. A storm of betrayal and broken promises, drowning out the past in a tangle of heat and whiskey. Clothes hit the floor. Hands grabbed. Teeth grazed skin. I didn't think about Lisa. Not once. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't a betrayed husband. I wasn't a man who lost everything. I was just a man, taking what he needed. And for one night, that was enough. I woke up just before dawn. Natalie was asleep beside me, tangled in the sheets. Peaceful. Unbothered. I sat up, rubbing my face. The headache was already creeping in, but that wasn't the worst of it. The worst part was the emptiness. The night before, I had convinced myself I was taking back control. That I was the one calling the shots. But now, staring at the woman beside me, I realized the truth. I hadn't taken control. I had just lost more of myself. I quietly got dressed, grabbed my keys, and walked out. No goodbye. No regrets. Just another line crossed. And no way to go back. The sun was rising when I stepped out of the hotel, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. A beautiful morning for a man with nothing left. I got in my car and sat there for a long time, gripping the wheel, staring at the empty road ahead. Last night was supposed to fix something. It didn't. Natalie was just a distraction, a temporary escape from a reality I couldn't outrun. But now, with the alcohol burned out of my system and the weight of my choices pressing down on me, I realized something. Lisa had betrayed me. But now, I had betrayed myself. I let anger drive me. Let vengeance consume me. And what did I have to show for it? Lisa was gone. Ricky was in jail. And me? I was just another ghost, haunting the life I used to have. I drove home in silence. Parked in the driveway. Sat there, staring at the house that used to be ours. I thought I'd feel relief now that it was over. But there was no peace in revenge. Just emptiness. I walked inside, straight to our bedroom. The bed was still unmade, the imprint of Lisa's body long gone. She had left me first. But in the end, I had done the same thing. I had left myself behind. I stood there for a long time before finally doing the one thing I should have done from the beginning. I grabbed my badge. My gun. And walked back out the door. Because I had one last thing left to do. I had to start over. Not for her. Not for revenge. For me.